and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today we are going to talk about something that's super important to the world, but also is a tad bit abstract to most people's everyday life. And that is the European Union.
今天我们要谈的是欧盟。这个可能有的人觉得欧盟好像离我们蛮远的，但其实欧盟现在在世界上是一个非常重要的一个团体。
The reason why it's important is that most places that are large, like areas of land joined together in one government, are basically empires. And Europe is actually a confederation of countries, and it's committed to democracy. It's very, very difficult to do this thing that the EU is doing. It seems when you read articles like this, like, oh, yeah, there's the EU, yeah, there is a history. But I need to tell you, doing the European Union is very, very hard, and it is not like something that you can take for granted.
那欧盟为什么重要呢？因为现在这个世界上这个很多土地非常广大的，如果是单一国家的话呢，常常它就是一个帝国的形式。但是呢，欧盟它成员国加起来土地非常的广大，但是它是一个联邦的形式，联盟的形式，而且他们是民主的一个国家或者民主的一个联盟。那这个其实相当不容易，尤其是你要维持欧盟这样一个组织的运作，其实非常非常不容易，因为每一个国家有他们自己的利益，有他们自己的想法，但是欧盟还是能够运作，这其实很不容易。
You know, I saw a map on, there's a Tumblr that likes to collect all the maps, the weird maps in the world. And this one was like, Sri Lanka has proposed a Schengen agreement for nearly all the countries around the Indian Ocean, excluding, weirdly, Malaysia and Indonesia, but whatever. The point is like all these land-bound countries could have a Schengen agreement where there's like visa-free travel from one country to another is like a really interesting idea, actually.
Yeah, 那这个其实就是现在其实也是可能也是未来的趋势，就是一些区域性的国家他们会结盟之后呢，可能在彼此各国之间旅行的话，可能就没有签证的问题等等的，或者他们的货物可以更方便的流通，这也可能是个未来的趋势。
I mean, when we saw Brexit, we understood Brexit meaning when Britain decided to leave the European Union. We understood how, you know, right now, Britain is in so much trouble because they don't have the agreements. And so suddenly everything is very expensive and very hard to get. And you realize how important these economic agreements are.
那像英国脱欧之后呢，其实国内面临了很多很多不同的很大的问题。那例如说脱离欧盟之后呢，很多东西它就产生关税的问题，就有很高的关税。所以呢，这个英国国内很多东西，包括民生必需品的物价就一直上涨。那这个就是显而易见的一个，你没有一个联盟，没有参加这个联盟，你会受到的损失。
And the other reason to read this article is that this is really standard news, political, economic reporting kinds of language. It's difficult to get through until you get used to it. So here's today's practice is getting used to this kind of English.
好，那像今天这种文章呢，它是资讯性的文章，所以像这种介绍资讯的文章常常会不是那么好读。那所以呢，我们要练习一下阅读这种纯属资讯性的文章。
Okay, so having said all of that, let's start the article. After World War I and II, Europe was in ruins. In an effort to promote peace, stability, and economic cooperation, the European Union, or EU, began to take shape in 1951 with the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community, or ECSC. This initiative was proposed in 1950 with the aim of creating a common market for steel and coal across its member countries, which were, at the time, France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and preventing future wars. In 1957, these 6 countries signed the Treaty of Rome, leading to the creation of the European Economic Community, or EEC. Its primary objective was to establish a common market by eliminating trade barriers and facilitating the free movement of people, goods, services, and capital among its member states. The EEC also aimed to promote growth and economic development throughout Europe. In 1967, the ECSC, the EEC, and the European Atomic Energy Community merged and eventually developed into the modern-day EU. In 1992, the Maastricht Treaty was signed by 12 countries. On November 1st, 1993, the treaty came into legal force, officially establishing the EU. The Maastricht Treaty had a profound impact on European integration, paving the way for the EU's common currency, the euro, and creating its citizenship. Soon, the EU expanded to include 27 countries. As a complex organization, the EU is driven by the desire to prevent future conflicts, as well as pursue shared interests among neighboring nations. Over the years, the EU has faced various challenges, especially when Britain left the EU during Brexit. Nevertheless, the EU's efforts to rebuild Europe after the catastrophic losses of World War II and keep peace cannot be overlooked. Okay, so that was a mouthful. There is a lot of crunchy language in there. But they're talking about, the kinds of really important things that keep our world fair for everybody and distribute power, which it sounds very abstract, but it is super important for your personal life that political power is distributed equally so that you can have a good life. Okay, so after World War I and II, and that World War I was in the 1910s and World War II was in the 1930s to 40s. So after this, two wars, which honestly feels like one war now in this point in history, Europe was in ruins. If something's in ruins, it means it's just completely flattened. And like there's pictures of the landscape, which is just burnt out trees and bomb craters, and all the buildings are broken. That's what in ruins means.
好，所以这个 to be in ruins， 这个 ruin 通常都会加 s 在这里。那事实上 ruins 这个字呢，它的复数形式常常是复数，有的时候是单数，但通常都是复数。它的意思就是 the state of being destroyed or damaged， 所以就是这个被摧毁掉了。所以 was in ruins 就是它就是一片废墟，就被摧毁掉的感觉。所以第一句话就告诉我们说，在第一次大战跟第二次大战之后呢，整个欧洲是一片废墟。
In an effort to promote peace, stability, and economic cooperation, let's just start there. So in an effort to do something, so they're trying to do this. This is the formal way of saying this was their purpose. This is what they were trying to do. What are they trying to do? Promote peace, stability, and cooperation. If you promote something, you create the conditions for it to happen. You make it possible to happen. So they wanted peace to happen. They wanted stability to happen. And they wanted everyone to be able to work together so that their economies worked. And so to do that, the European Union, or the EU, began to take shape in 1951. So it didn't exist yet. It was starting to exist. It's like the sort of precursor. That's a fancy word. It was like the
先驱 precursor.
The thing that happened before the thing actually happened. So what happened is that the European Coal and Steel Community, the ECSE, it's hard to say that, ECSC, this thing was first created. It was like the first step that everybody took towards like creating a common economic thing. It was like the baby step.
好，那刚刚这个 Angela 老师用到那个字 precursor， 它就是先驱或者是前身的意思。它的拼法是 P-R-E-C-U-R-S-O-R precursor。那这个事实上这个字蛮好记的，那 C-U-R 这个字根就是跑的意思 run 的意思， pre 是在之前，所以在你之前跑在你前面那个就是一个前身，一个先驱。好，那我们来看看这个句子，他说 in an effort to， 这个片语要把它背起来。好 in an effort to do something， 就是为了要努力达成某件事情，这个 effort 在这里就是一个 earnest attempt， 这个很认真很有诚意的一个尝试，也就是努力的意思。所以为了要努力能够 promote 是促进的意思， to contribute to the progress or growth of something， 为了要努力要促进和平 peace， stability 稳定，还有呢 economic cooperation 就是这个经济的合作。为了要达成这些目标呢，那这个欧盟的 European Union， 那简称 EU， 它怎么样开始 take shape， 就是成型，开始有这个形状出现了，就开始慢慢发展起来了。这是在1951年的时候。那它怎么样成型呢？ with 就是它的附随或者这个伴随的状况跟条件，就是 the establishment of， 也就是随着这个东西的创立呢，欧盟就逐渐成型了。那什么的创立呢？是欧洲煤钢共同体，那这个简称为 ECSC， 这个 COAL coal 就是煤 steel 就是钢，那 community 在这里是共同体的意思。
So this initiative was proposed in 1950. Initiative is a word for talking about a thing that people did when you don't have a specific name for it. You could also have said this proposal was proposed, but then proposal proposed sounds dumb. So initiative is a good word to use, or proposal. Do you have another word?
Well, it's a commencing event.Yeah,
it's a commencing event.
Or commencing 就是开始的一个 move 一个动作 commence 就是 C-O-M-M-E-N-C 再加个 I-N-G commence 就是开始，也就是开始的一个动作，所以中文通常这个 initiative 通常会讲的翻译成为倡议，就我倡导要做这个东西或者一个提议。
And initiative is a great word to use because it feels very like 主动.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this initiative was proposed in 1950, and they had the aim, their purpose, their reason they did it was to create a common market for steel and coal across its member countries. Why did they need this? They needed to rebuild. Everything was in ruins, so they wanted to easily buy and sell steel and coal because everyone needed these things to get themselves back together. And the member countries for the ECSC were France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, which is a little tiny country. It's smaller than Taipei City. But,
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, you know what? I'm not 100% sure.
Okay,
but
it's
like,
very small.
It's tiny.
Okay.
Like, we think of ourselves as tiny. Taiwan does, but like, no.
Okay.
You could be Luxembourg. Okay. And anyways, so the point of this was sharing steel and coal and preventing future wars. They're like, if we're working together, maybe we won't start fighting.
好，所以呢，这个 initiative 我们刚刚讲就是倡议或者提议。那这个字其实它的这个 in 那个 it 啊，就是 go 的意思，它的字根 it 就是 go 的意思，所以 go 就是一个 move， 所以它一开始 a commencing move。好，所以这个提议呢 was proposed 被提议出来。那这里刚刚 Angela 讲，你可以用 proposal 也可以，但是如果说 this proposal was proposed， 那英文就很好笑啊，两个字几乎重复同一个字了。所以总之呢，这个提议被提出来是在1950年。那 with the aim of doing something， 就它的目标是要做这件事情。目标是要干嘛呢？是要 create， 要建立一个 common market， 一个共同的市场。什么的共同市场呢？ For steel 钢铁，还有 coal 还有煤的共同市场。而且是 across its member countries. Member countries 就是它的这个组成国家，那 across 是横跨，也就是在它所有的组成国家之间呢，他们希望能够有一个共同的一个煤跟钢的共同市场。那它的组成国家有哪些呢？它一个 dash 列出来，最早有法国、德国、意大利、比利时、荷兰还有卢森堡。另外呢，它要干嘛呢？要 preventing， 它另外一个目的是要能够避免future wars 未来的战争。那 preventing 为什么有 ing 呢？因为它是接前面那个 with the aim of， 所以它有两个目标，第一个是 creating a common market， 第二个是 with the aim of preventing future wars。So
I just looked it up on MapFight because I'm curious. Luxembourg is about the size of the greater Taipei area.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, tiny.
Yeah, I saw the map just now.
Yeah.
所以那个卢森堡这个大小大概就是整个大台北地区那么大，所以这个也是个小小的一个国家。
So in 1957, these 6 countries signed the Treaty of Rome. Rome is a great place to sign a treaty because then you can go out and have really good food after.
Yeah.And
anyways, this led to the creation of the European Economic Community, or the EEC.
那1957年呢，以上这6个国家呢，他们 signed， 他们签署了 the Treaty of Rome， 就是罗马条约。那 leading to 就是罗马条约呢 lead to 我们常常翻成导致啊，但导致通常是坏事情，那这里是好事，所以我们可以说促成。签了这个罗马条约之后呢，就促成了 the creation of the 就促成了什么东西的创立呢？这个欧洲经济共同体的创立。那欧洲经济共同体简称是 EEC。So
its primary objective, so primary means main, and objective is goal. So you could say its main goal was to establish a common market. To establish something means to create it and set it up and make it a thing. So what did they want to make a thing?They wanted to make a common market. They wanted to have something where everybody could basically buy and sell what they wanted. So they did this by eliminating trade barriers. So they said, our 2 countries, anything that's traded between us, even though we have 2 different currencies, there's going to be no little laws that say because you're selling salt, you have to have a 10% markup or this kind of tax. These kinds of various trade barriers. They also wanted to facilitate certain things. If you facilitate something, you make it easier, you make it smoother, and you remove barriers. So they're facilitating what? The free movement of people, goods, services, and capital. So people can move back and forth. Like if I live in Spain, I can go get a job in Germany and everybody is fine. I can sell my products to Romania, if Romania is part of the EU right now. I forgot.
Maybe not at that time.
Yeah, not at that time. But, I can sell my goods to France, and then I can have a service. Like I can be an architect in like Germany and then go build buildings in Holland, and there's no barriers to that. And also capital. So I can invest in anything in any of these different countries, and my money is good in all of the different places, and there aren't capital controls, like where there's like limits and laws about what money can be spent where. And so it just makes everything much easier to move around. And if you know what economies are about, the point of money is that it has to move. If you keep money stuck in a place like a savings account, it's actually bad for the economy.
好，所以呢 ，ITS 就是这个欧洲经济共同体，它的 primary objective 就是 main goal， 它主要的目标 primary 就是主要的。好，那这个主要目标是要 establish 建立一个 a common market 一个共同市场 by 怎么建立呢？借由 by eliminating trade barriers。trade barriers 就是贸易障碍，那这个 barrier 就是障碍，那你也可以说中文另外一个说法是贸易壁垒，你要消除这个贸易壁垒。eliminate 就是消除，那个 LIMI 那个就是边界， E 就是 out， 所以把它 out of your boundary 就是把它丢出去，消除掉了。所以它要消除贸易壁垒，同时借由另外一个手段是 facilitate 就是使它便利或者就是促进，要促进 the free movement of 就自由的流动。什么东西的自由流动呢？他希望人员 people 能够自由流动。 goods 记得要加 s 货物，那 services 它是可以数的，所以也要加 s 服务。然后呢还有 capital 是不可数的资本，所以 capital 不加 s， 所以它要促进人员货物服务资本的流动。在哪里的流动呢？ Among its member states， 在它的成员国之间，他希望人员货物服务还有资本资金都能够自由的流动 free movement。
The EEC also aimed to promote or to help make happen growth. They wanted the economy to grow. They wanted economic development to happen throughout Europe.
好，那这个欧洲经济共同体呢，也同时 aimed to 就是以什么为目标，他们的目标也是什么呢？同时也是要 promote 要促进 growth 成长，还有呢 economic development 经济发展 throughout Europe， 他们也希望能够促进整个欧洲的经济发展。
The reason they had this is part of the reason why World War II broke out. The second half of this World War happened is because nobody's economy was working. And so they're like, okay, if our economies are all working, then we can prevent war. That was the theory.
所以这个二次大战呢，有很多人说它会爆发的有一个重要原因是因为那时候很多国家的经济都陷入困境，所以才爆发了战争，所以他们希望能够借由促进经济发展来避免战争的发生。
So in 1967, the ECSC, the EEC, and the EAEC, which is the European Atomic Energy Community, all of these acronyms, which are very hard to remember and pronounce, merged, thank goodness, and developed into the modern-day EU, which is much simpler to say. But also, all of those agencies were basically the precursors to the EU. So when they all came together, they created the foundation for our modern-day EU.
好，所以在1967年呢，这个欧洲煤钢共同体，还有呢 EEC 就是欧洲经济共同体，还有呢欧洲原子能共同体，他们 merged 就是合并了，然后呢 eventually 最后呢 developed into 发展成为 the modern-day EU， 发展成为现今的 EU。And
that sounds so easy, but I know the amount of work that went into the creation of that.
Yeah, 听起来很容易，但其实非常不简单的事情。
Yeah. So in 1992, the Maastricht Treaty was signed by 12 countries. Maastricht is this town that's way at the bottom of Holland, and it kind of looks like it was scooped out from 2 other countries. Like, you wonder what happened there. But anyways, it's a beautiful town. I encourage you to go visit it. That's where they had this treaty signed by the original members of the EU.
所以在1992年呢，这个马斯垂克条约被签署，有12个国家签署了。那这个马斯垂克是一个地方的名字。
So on November 1st, 1993, the treaty came into legal force. If something comes into legal force, it means it's now law, it's now applicable, people are now following this set of rules. And so it officially established the EU. So that's basically when the EU was born, the birth date.
好，所以呢1993年11月1日呢，这个条约 came into legal force， 就是具有法律效力，也就是生效了，而且是 officially， 它因为法生效了，所以呢，它就正式的 establishing 成立了 EU。The
Maastricht Treaty had a profound impact on European integration. That's a mouthful sentence right there. So if something has a profound impact, and impact means it hits you. Profound means deep or thorough. So if something has a profound impact on you, it affects every area of your life, but especially it affected European integration, which is how much the countries are interdependent upon each other. And so it paved the way, it created a smooth road towards the EU's common currency, the euro, because if you're going to make trading the simplest, you need to have a common currency. And so that took a lot because currency is kind of what creates nationalities, and people were afraid of losing their national identity by losing their currency. So that was a big obstacle to implementing the euro. But they created the euro and they created its citizenship.
好，所以呢，这个 to have a profound impact on something 就是对什么产生了深远的影响。所以马斯垂克条约呢，对什么产生了深远的影响呢？对于 European integration 就是欧洲的整合有深远的影响。Integration 就是整合的意思。然后呢，分词构句 paving the way for 它为什么铺路呢？为这个欧盟的共同货币 the EU's common currency 就是欧盟的共同货币，也就是同位语告诉你 the euro 就是欧元，它为欧元铺路，而且呢，它也创造了它的 citizenship 就是欧盟公民的这样一个概念，叫做在这里就是 citizen 的意思。
Soon, the EU expanded to include 27 countries. Again, a sentence about a very complex and hard-fought process.
Yeah, 这个 expanded to include 就是 expand 是扩展，它扩展然后呢包含，也就很快的 the EU 欧盟就扩展，而且包含了27个国家。
As a complex organization, the EU is driven by the desire to prevent future conflicts, as well as pursue shared interests among neighboring nations. This is basically the EU's mission statement. A mission statement is what, when you ask them, oh, what are you guys about? What's the purpose of your organization? That's this. So their purpose is, let's not have wars, and let's see what our shared interests can get us.
Yeah, 这个就是组织的宗旨。所以 as 作为一个 complex 就是很复杂的 organization， 它的组织其实非常复杂，但是呢欧盟 is driven by 它是由什么所驱动呢？它是由一个 the desire to 它是由一个愿想所驱动，就大家都想要做到这件事情，就驱动了这个 EU。 那想要做什么呢？它是 the desire to prevent future conflicts， 它要避免未来的一些冲突， as well as 同时它也希望能够 pursue 就是这个追求 shared 就是共享的，也就是共同的 interests， 他也希望追求成员国之间共同的利益。那这个成员国之间就是 among， 那在这里他不是讲成员国，他说 neighboring nations 就是彼此邻近的国家，其实他们成员国彼此也都是相当邻近的，所以就是希望能够追寻邻近国家之间的共同利益，这个是 EU 成立的宗旨。
So over the years, the EU has faced various challenges. There has been some difficulties in the road to keeping the EU going, especially when Britain left the EU during Brexit a couple years ago. So Brexit is Britain's exit. That's why we say Brexit.
好 over the years 多年来欧盟 has faced 它面对了 various challenges 不同的挑战，尤其是当英国离开了欧盟，是 during Brexit 就是英国脱欧的时候，英国离开了。
Nevertheless, the EU's efforts to rebuild Europe after the catastrophic losses of World War II and keep peace cannot be overlooked. It is super important that we have the EU in the world.
Yeah, nevertheless, 然而 the EU's efforts to 就是欧盟致力于两件事情，这里有讲两件事情。第一件事情是 rebuild 重建 Europe 重建欧洲 after the catastrophic losses of World War II。 那 catastrophic 就是灾难性的， 所以在二次大战灾难性的损失之后呢 EU 他们努力要重建欧洲，这是他第一个致力于做的事情。第二个致力于做的事情是他的 efforts to keep peace， 维持和平。那他在这两方面的努力是怎么样？是 cannot be overlooked， 就是不容忽视，不可忽略的意思。
So we have some questions for you. They're short answer questions, so you just got to write it in. Number 1, name the organizations. Name the alphabet soup that formed the basis for the establishment of the EU.
Yeah, 他第一题要我们说出来形成或者是组成 EU 的这些组织有哪些。
It's more like a vowel soup, but let's go.
Yeah.
The ECSC, the EEC, and the EAEC, or the European Atomic Energy Community.
好，所以就是 ECSC 这欧洲煤钢共同体，然后呢 The EEC 就是欧洲经济共同体，还有呢欧洲原子能共同体。
It's EXIC, EEC, and EAIC. Yeah, we actually just name these out. We just spell them. Okay, and then number 2, which treaty established the EU? What made it actually happen?
好，是哪一个条约使得 EU 可以成立呢？
And the answer is the Maastricht Treaty. That extra A in there, just blame the Dutch language. They're always sticking extra letters in.
好，所以答案是马斯垂克条约，因为签署了这个条约，这个条约生效，那 EU 就成立了。
Okay, so that's all we have for you on the EU, and go forth and have a good day. And we'll see you again the next time for more Ivy English. Until then, bye-bye.